Bill Hames is the Executive Chairman of Hames Charlie and its founding father. He is a qualified architect, urban designer and land economist with high-level skills in building communities. Bill has considerable international experience, particularly in Southeast Asia, where he has been responsible for a number of major retail, resort and residential developments. His forte is placing urban design into a practical commercial realm, as well as the creation of vibrant civic spaces. His expertise in urban design and city planning is recognised in the design advisory committees he served on for the City of Perth and currently for the City of South Perth and for the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority. Interestingly, Future Bayswater is advocating for a number of things, and a design advisory committee for the City of Bayswater is one of them. Bill is also an active member of the Committee for Perth, as stated earlier. Marion is the CEO of that Committee for Perth and serves as chairman of its reshaping committee. In that capacity, Bill has contributed to the transport and transport-oriented development discussions throughout the Perth metropolitan area. His work throughout Australia on type developments provides him with many alternative examples of how Australian cities are tackling growth and change. Bill describes his talk tonight in the following way. Tall buildings. Density is the villain accompanied by his cohort height. Soulless tall towers, such as the cry from the worried community. Is this true or a myth? While Bill is speaking, he would like you to keep this focus question, this is on the white sheet, in mind. The City of Bayswater has a population of 69,493, while Perth has a 1.834 million people population. Thus, Bayswater accommodates 3.8% of our total metropolitan population and currently has 25,495 dwellings. Perth is predicted to expand to 3.5 million. And under Perth and Pill 3.5 million, Bayswater is required to accommodate an additional 15,800 new infill dwellings by 2050, which represents a 62% increase. So a simple question, how would you like to do this? Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Hames.
Thank you. Everyone right on this? Can you hear me through this? Right, if you do that because I'm about out of hands. Okay. I'm on. I'm mic'd up. I'm working. Okay. All right. I'll manage. You want me to hold that?
Yeah, I need you.
You need me to hold that.
Sorry.
This is going to be good. This is good. Okay, don't worry. I'll speak loud. Okay, we've talked. Density is the villain. You know, the cohort height. Yes, it's always those problems. Those two villains, height and density. There are many bad examples to fuel the concerns of a community. And there are many great cities. There are a combination of density and also tall buildings. Cities are all about people and streets are for living. And the real question should be, how does the building sit with the street? How does it serve the street and how does the building serve its neighbours? Good buildings don't have to feel like tall buildings, especially at the street level. We have things called setbacks, podiums, and a combination of those architectural elements are the tools of trade that preserve the integrity of the street. What are tall buildings? Some of the indexes around the world suggest that 200 metres is tall. That's 60 stories. In Perth, the metropolitan area, we don't seem to aspire to be that tall. I would say we've got an appetite for an 8 to 15, 15 to 20, and just occasionally, in some extreme locations and great locations, we get a 40 to 50. That's tall. What's dense? A plot ratio of 4 to 6, plot ratio 1. What's dense? What is really dense? Well, from all of my work and all of my research, there doesn't seem to be a Goldilocks density and height combination. There's no perfect solution. Each solution depends on its locality, its place, and the community in which it is. And I think that's really important, and I will speak more about that. Each place is different, and each place needs to determine what it wants to be and how you want to do this. And I think, you can say, I can pull the drawbridge up and we don't want any more people. I don't think that's an option, and I think it's incrementalism. It's not going to happen. So you have to prepare yourself for what is going to happen. And you've heard, you know, the state will prescribe 15,000 odd new dwellings here. You know, that's a 60 odd % increase. So how are you going to do it? Right? And you can't walk away. Now, there's also a lot of myths, you know, and it's really interesting. Los Angeles gets a really bad rap. Do you know Los Angeles ranks today as the least sprawling city in the United States? The least. There's a new index of measured. Richard Florida is a great geographer and researcher. And also his colleague Thomas Leidy from New York University. They write, in LA, the sheer lack of low density development places it on top of all the US metro areas, right? And I'm going to show you a table, all right? I'm running out of arms here, but yeah, bit up. Okay, the hand mic, righto, I'll stick it in here, how's that? Yeah, that's a bit more comfortable. I'll just lean down. Okay. It's really interesting. You know, you look at New York City. The average height of New York City, it's a very tall city. No, it's not. It's 8.4 metres high, average. Little old Los Angeles is 5.6, you know, metres high. So, contrary to popular myth, LA is the densest city in the United States. But you know, I've heard myths, and so have you, about Los Angeles. They're myths. And I think one of the things that, you know, the Committee for Perth is all about is evidence. Give us the facts. And I like to deal with the facts. So, you know, the relationship, you know, New York is far denser at its core, but height is only one part of the story. It's high in the middle, but very, very low on the outside. Whereas Los Angeles is tall, but for a bigger, wider area. Now, there's another paper that you need to read, The Relationship Between Skyscrapers and Great Cities, by Richard Florida. What it does is it establishes a connection between the size of the city and the height of the buildings near the CBD. LA falls out of that generality. But it leads me to consider what form of city do we aspire for in Perth at 3.5 million people? And what I say to you, what part of the equation are you in Bayswater going to take? You know, and you can say, well, I've pulled the drawbridge up, I don't want anyone to come. You might get a shock when your kids want to leave and they don't want to live in South Geraldton or North Bunbury. And you might also get a bit upset when you've got to do a half a day commute to see your grandkids. So dragging up the drawbridge is not an option, you know. Research also shows that low, flat cities exhibit high surface areas to volume ratios, whereas taller cities exhibit the reverse. Now, low, flat cities cost more to build because there's more surface area that you have to build to contain the number of people. The other thing that says the smaller surface area to volume of buildings, they have a smaller heat gain and a heat loss, and hence denser cities are more environmentally sustainable. So if you're green, you really would want to change the nature of your cities. Another myth is the culprits of density and height attract more cars. That is a myth. Nothing could be more further than the truth. Evidence shows that as density increases, especially in close proximity to alternative public transport, the car usage drops. In Vancouver, for example, what they have discovered is that kids under 25, there are less kids under 25 that now have driver's licences. They don't need to use a car. So, in fact, the other thing is, roads for cars contribute about 30% of the surface area. In Vancouver, where density has been increased and heights have been increased, they've actually reduced the number of lanes in the middle of the CBD. They're taking out lanes and putting in linear strips of gardens, walkways, cycleways, etc. They're actually winning back bitumen. So the myth about density attracts cars is furthest from the truth. So what characteristics and form do you want Perth to evolve? And more importantly, how do you want Bayswater to play its role in that 3.5 million scenario? Let me suggest a couple of things that you might not want to argue about. You know, how you solve it is up to you. But I would suspect that we will need to build more sustainability into our cities. You know, this planet, I did hear a thing the other day, we're saving the planet. The planet will be here after we're gone, trust me. We're saving ourselves. The planet couldn't give a bugger. It's been here through hot and cold, so it doesn't really care, you know. But I do think we need to build more sustainable cities. The second thing I think you might not argue about, we'd like our city to be less congested. Then if we want it to be less congested, then density and height near public transport, and possibly we even need more public transport, right? I'm dead positive we do. I think we'd like a connected city, you know, physically as well as digitally. Digital will allow us to work from anywhere, and physical because if we live and work and play in a denser walkable area, we don't need to take a trip. And if we live in one place and we work in another, and each of them are connected by a public transport system, then we can share a trip. I think we also would like an affordable city. If we spend less on cars, then we can afford a wider range of housing choice. We can select from a number of different houses for as our family life cycle changes. What we start off with is not what we end up with. Then each time we make that choice, it releases another opportunity for another family. And currently, our choice of housing in Perth is very, very limited. We don't have choice. We are well served by the suburban model, and that'll continue to remain good housing type, and it's a good place to raise kids. However, as we explore increased density and differing height solutions, it will develop different housing choices and different housing types. I think we'd also want a safe and communal city. In Washington DC, in a place called Arlington, it's on the Ralston-Bolston line, and that's a railway line. What happened is that. Now, each along that line, and you can see these little circles, they're about 500, 600 metres, circles. This is what happened. This happened 36 years ago. I was advised by the mayor, and he wasn't the mayor at the time a lot of this stuff happened, but I was told by the mayor that this is the most desired community in Washington, DC. In the early 60s, Arlington city officials called for this orange line, as it's called, to be located in a decaying commercial corridor, right? There was community concerns that there would be high density, high buildings, and in that corridor, and it would disrupt the character of this older community and neighbourhood. The political leaders at the time determined that economic benefits were better than the long-term. There were a long-term benefit. They were correct, because not only do the values of the commercial property and the residential property in this area increased, But people began to make a lifetime commitment to this community. And it's very interesting. As the Mayor noted, the people lived in the suburban low-rise houses because that's what was there. But what happened is as these big nodes at every station started to grow, and apartments and jobs and all that sort of stuff went there, what they noticed is that they would move from the low density housing and the kids would leave home and they'd move into the 1 bedroom, the 2 bedroom and the 3 bedroom here. They lived there and they moved to there. That was really good because the grandkids could walk to see the grandparents and the grandparents could walk to see the kids. And it's really interesting what occurred as Dad got tired of mowing the lawn, he moved into there and they moved back there. And what happened, and this was the Mayor's comment, the kids that started off life as a cub became a scoutmaster, went right through the thing and ultimately stayed in the community. It is the most, they stay there, they don't move out. And he said, we've just got such a stable, wonderful community that it's hard to buy in there. At this one, the values went up. Now, what does it look like? Because that's just a plan. It looks like that. And the things that these people were really concerned with, that it was going to ruin the quality of their life, it preserved it. It's totally unpreserved. It's totally undisturbed. Now, if you don't like those nasty things called height and density, if you don't like them, then you'll get a Vegemite spread, I call it, across your town. And that impacts everybody. This doesn't impact everybody and it gives you housing choice. So what can happen is I can live here and work there, or there, and if I don't work there, right, I could live there and work down there, but I don't use my car, right? So again, it's a model that works. Now, so I think, you know, if I look at, you know, the kids when they swap over, the place becomes safe, proud and dedicated community. In 2014, the county, this area, had a population of 230,000 people with a density of 34 people per hectare, making it the second largest principal city in the entire Washington area. As a comparison, the 34, Perth's got a density now of 11, and Sydney's got a density of 20. So when people say to me density is bad, I can tell you that it's got a very high density, but it's highly livable, and it's got a huge amount of amenity. Like, if I live here, I can walk to the restaurant. It's 500 metres. I don't even need to take my car anywhere. So, the other thing I'd like, or I think I would like, is an innovative city. I'm glad you're here. Harvard University's Edward Glaser, in an article that he wrote, How Skyscrapers Can Save the City, he states that dense cities are far more productive than suburbs. They offer better paying jobs, and tall buildings enable human interactions that are the heart of economic innovation and progress itself. All right? I'll take it one step further. There's no doubt that the remaining values of cities is to create the opportunity for an exchange interaction, a shared activity, where we exchange information, exchange business, and we share things. However, it all needs to happen in the streets. And I come back to the streets, and an urban designer, the buildings are secondary. It's the spaces between the buildings that really make the place. So I think we need to forget about the arguments about height and density and focus on how they are good neighbours and what sort of amenity they create and what sort of opportunity for us to meet and greet, bump into people, see people. But not all ideas and innovation is born, have come to life in a dense environment. And I've had this argument, innovation has occurred in the garages. Microsoft was born in a garage. It was born in a garage in a place like that. So innovation can occur in low density places. But it's really interesting when you go to Silicon Valley, which is pretty low dense. But if you go into Google or Microsoft in Vancouver or in Seattle, if you go into those places, you know what they do? They actually try to increase the density and the activities of a city street in those innovation hubs. Because it's all happening, there's all restaurants in there. If you go to Google, it's full of restaurants and places. It's not set up like a normal office. So they're trying to repeat what happens in dense cities. Arts, music scene, they're all found to flourish in older districts and warehouse areas. We need multiple choices. So, I think, what does it all mean? To me, it suggests that the city form that I want Perth to be, and this is my choice, I want a rich mixture of places, of varying densities and heights, spread across a well-connected way, and spread across the entire metropolitan space. I want a rich tapestry of choice where I can choose what I want, when I want it, and that it doesn't take me long to get to the alternative spaces and places. So, I'm going to put you this thing, this question, and you can slice it and dice it many different ways, right? You can slice it and dice it with, we're at 3.8%. You can do a calculation of if we had 3.8% people here now. I've got a number here somewhere. If you can muck around with statistics forever. I can tell you, if you slice and dice it on dwellings like this one, your increase in Bayswater is 62%. You've got to increase the number of houses by 62%. How are you going to do it? If you slice and dice it just in population, and currently you have, 3.5%, 3.8% of the total metropolitan. So if you still, when we're 3.5 million, you're going to change your dynamic in population by 90.8%. That's a big number. And if you just do it on numbers of people that you might get across there, it's around 42%. So somewhere between 40 and 90 in percentage terms is the magnitude of change that Bayswater is going to have. You can muck around with the numbers I reckon dwellings is a good one because you've got to provide somewhere for them to live, and that's 62% more. So how do you want to do it? Now, I made a list of innovative, connected, all those sorts of things, and that's the way I would be trying to go, and I'm looking at it in the Perth metropolitan area because I'm not just focusing on Bayswater, but all our Bayswaters and South Perths and Claremonts and everything, and including the other areas, we all have a role to play. But what I challenge you is I would hate to see Bayswater look like Claremont or look like Cottesloe or look like somewhere else. You need to work really hard on working out what's your Bayswater going to be, what's it going to look like, what's going to differentiate it. But you can't say, don't come. That's not going to happen.
Where's your respect for heritage in all this, Bill?
Fantastic. I think it's fantastic, I think that we can coexist. I mean, you saw an example If you go down to the Raffles today, the old Raffles Hotel and where the Raffles building sits, it's got a new sense of life. So yeah, you've got to take heritage into account. I totally agree with you. I mean, that's part of the characteristic of your place.
Yeah, it is. It's our town centre.
Yes.
It's our heritage.
Yep.
So what do? Bowl it all over?
No.
And build up horrors?
No.
No, good, thank you.
No, but you have to work out how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't also just say they're not coming.
Well, do you have any suggestions? Because
Oh yeah, well
at the moment
there's
it
about
seems-
8 suggestions there.
Bill,
Yeah.
because
We seem to have gone into the Q&A bit now. I'm just getting that feeling. Look, before we do that, and these are great questions, so can we come back to them in a couple of minutes?